Good evening, everyone. My name is Leangari. I'm very happy to see everyone here with us for this interesting discussion all about elections in Africa. And of course, we do know some of our African countries, such as Kenya, has an upcoming general election. And a lot has been going on in Kenya as far as elections is concerned. We've seen some of the candidates who have been struggling to go through in terms of running for the seats, and some of them are still having court cases ongoing. And some of them, of course, like we've seen Johnson Sakaja, who had a court case, and just things have changed in his favor. And this is just one of the many cases that we can actually talk about in terms of Kenya and some of the hurdles that some of the candidates are going through. But more than this is just one of the things we're looking at, the case studies of elections. And we want to understand really elections and vote tallying, what really does happen. Does the vote even count? And of course, we have quite an array of guests here, and I'm really, really happy. I know we have Tundu Lissu, who will be joining us later. He is the vice chair of Chadema Party of Tanzania. Of course, I can see there Daniel Orogo, who is a governance expert, also likes to call himself a Pan-Africanist. And of course, I'm also very happy to see you, Joel Muita. Joel Muita works within the division. He is the chair of the committee that handles the youth, affairs of the IEBC in Kenya. That's the Independent Electoral Commission. Very happy to see every one of you. Maria Sarungi, of course, my co-host here with us today. And I'm happy to see you, Maria, there. Of course, Fatuma Namatsi is also here with us. Fatuma is running for a seat in the ongoing, in the upcoming elections in Kenya, and she's not running for the first time. By the way, Fatuma is very, very determined to get that seat that she has been trying to clinch for quite a bit, and that's it being the Makadara constituency in Nairobi County. Fatuma, good to see you. Daniel, I'm happy to see you, and Joel as well. I know Tundu Lissu will be joining us soon. Maria, maybe you have something to say today.
Yes, definitely. And this is going to be, I believe, a really interesting session. It's a question that I think many of us in Africa have been asking: does the vote count? There is a whole array of anecdotes and of course, some of the sayings. Some may not be from Africa, but basically saying that what really matters is not whether the vote is going to be cast, but whether that vote is going to count. So this is going to be a very dynamic conversation, and I think that primarily, the focus will be, of course, on the whole technical bit of the vote tallying. Every country has its ways. There's some horror stories in some countries. There's some countries which are faring better in terms of the vote tallying, and also in terms of basically challenging the vote tallying itself, where the court systems are solid. There, at least, we're able to see that despite challenges, contestants or participants of the election, especially for the crucial political constituencies, they're able to challenge the results in court. That in itself, I think, just takes a bit of pressure off the vote tallying. Nonetheless, the questions continue. And just to make it more particular, the whole issue around vote tallying is not only particular for Africa, as we know. So I really hope to have a great conversation, and I'm also looking forward to have more and more people from all around Africa joining this conversation, particularly from our East Africa region. This is not the only issue that we're seeing today in Kenya, but we're also seeing some in the past from Tanzania, from Uganda. Zimbabwe is coming up as well. We've seen in the past also in Zambia. So I'm really looking forward to a great conversation.
Thank you, Maria. I'm just so spoiled for choice today, and I'm so happy to see the kind of panel we have. But I want to go straight to Joel, and I do see Joel is not yet able to speak. But if Joel, you can accept the speaker invitation that has been sent out to you. I'll give you time perhaps to accept it. But let's also, move to Fatuma. We'll come back to you, Joel. Fatuma, if you can hear me, this is not the first time that you're running for that particular seat. You tried it before, it didn't go through, and now you want to try again. Tell us a little bit about your experience. Why are you so determined for this particular seat in Nairobi for the Makadara constituency?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Fatuma.
Good
Can you hear
evening.
me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, my name is Fatuma Mwanashidi Namatsi. I'm aspiring, I'm a candidate now for MCA Arambe Ward, Makadara constituency, Nairobi. And this is my second time. And it's because I'm a leader. I have a passion with my leadership qualities. And I believe in myself. No matter how many times I fall, but I'm still pressing on, and I have faith that this year, when God wishes, I will make it. And I need to be the leader of Makadara MCA so that to empower the youth, to empower the women, and all the community at large. It's more years in Arambe ward. We have never been led with a woman. And that is why I have a passion in Arambe ward, so that when God wishes, when I get this seat, to change Arambe ward. Thank you. Hello.
Sorry, Fatuma. I think we just had a slight technical problem there, but you can proceed. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Yes, Fatuma.
I'm
Yeah,
saying it.
Fatuma.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a bit of context for those of us who are not very familiar with the Kenyan politics. So you are running as a full-fledged MP for your seat, is it? A
No,
member
I'm
of
running as
parliament?
MCA seat.
MCA, so that's like a councillor.
Yeah, councillor.
And you said this is your second time, and you're
Yeah,
not
this is my
running on
second
special
time.
seats. You're not running on special seats, are you?
No, I'm
No, this
running
is.
on People Empowerment Party.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is my second time. In 2017, I also vied on the same seat, but
Were
I
you?
did not make it.
Uh-huh. You were not on the ballot.
No, I was on the ballot 2017.
So, what were some of the challenges that you saw? Did you accept and did you like the way that the voting itself happened and the tallying? And can you give us a bit of insight? How does it work in Kenya?
Yeah, in Kenya, during the voting time, that's when I lost him. I lost most of the votes because,
Mm-hmm.
on the ground, it's very difficult as a woman without money. And those are challenges I went through in 2017. Even this time, we are going through those challenges, but with the little money we have, we are doing our ground campaign, looking for votes. Actually, it's very difficult, but we are making it. And as a leader, you have to sacrifice, and you have to sacrifice so that you may get this seat. It's very difficult. Like this time, we are almost 13, 13 people vying on this seat in the same ward, but we are 5 women. But I have faith that I'm going to make it. No matter the challenges, I have faith.
That's wonderful. So, you will need. Do you have actually representatives who are helping you to oversee or to observe the polling stations? What is the system?
Yeah, in Kenya, you have to look for your own, those who look for your votes. So sometimes it's difficult because for those people to look for your votes during the voting day, you have to pay them. And when you don't have money, That is the reason why women fall during that tallying time. During that time, you have to look for the people to look after your votes. And when you don't have money, that is when your votes will be taken away with that opponent. That is the time when votes get lost during tallying. So when you don't have your people to look for your votes, that's how the votes get lost. So it's so difficult, but we will make it. We are making it.
Do you have volunteers? Do you have people who are ready to do it without payment, like volunteers who are enthusiastic maybe about you being a candidate, or is it because it has become a standard sort of operation that you have to pay them?
Kenya is very difficult unless I take like my sisters, my brothers. But even those sisters, my brothers are not enough. It's a must that you will look for other people and you have to pay them because those people have to eat. Since they left their home very early in the morning, you have at least to look something for them that day so that they may not go angry, they may not go without anything that day. So it's so difficult. It's it's so difficult, and it's also we can't depend on the volunteers. So it's good when you have the money, that's when you will make it. Actually, everything here in Kenya is about money. And maybe we are looking for those organization of women's who can help us, even paying only the agents, because we have done a lot of work in the ground. Sometimes we do a lot of work in the ground, but we just lose our votes during tallying time.
Interesting.
So, yeah, okay.
Go ahead, Madam. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted, just for the sake of, for a wider audience to understand, once the vote is cast, the tallying happens at the polling station. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
And then from there, how does the tally go forward? In your case, what was your experience in the last election?
So after the tallying, that is when they count votes of all the aspirants. And after they count, that's when the IPC will declare the winner. And so when you don't have your people to look for your votes that time, that is when we lose our votes.
There has been recently a debate we have seen, and I'm hoping for Joel to be able to come up. Joel, you will see that you're in the space now, and if you look, there is a microphone icon on the bottom left of your screen. If you touch that mic, you'll be able to get in. But my question to you, Fatuma, is going to be: there is a discussion that some of us are seeing around what is called electronic and manual tallying
Yes.
or counting of votes. What exactly is this about, and what is your stand about that? Electronic or manual? Which one do you prefer?
I prefer electronics. But in case the electronic fail,
Mm-hmm.
there is no another option. We have to use the manual.
Yes.
Because
And you're
sometimes of these networks, sometimes it is stuck. Those electronic stacks. So after it stacks, the only option we should do is to use the manual.
That's very true. There has been also a lot of talk about the electronic being manipulated, that it is easy to manipulate. Do you have faith in it? For us, some of us in some countries, we always have some reservations about how the actual counting happens
Yeah, we have faith in
electronically.
it. We have faith in it, but electronic is man-made things. So sometimes they can get spoiled. They can, you know, we can't depend on it actually, but after maybe it starts or it's not, it will not, the network, the what, the other option, we shall just use manual.
I think my next question is going to be that you did talk about being a woman. Do you think that as a woman, you are not able to raise as much funds? You have some challenges. This is because you have repeatedly been talking about women not being able to gain access to that.
Yeah, actually, it's being a woman, we pass through more challenges, like financial, many challenges on the ground. As women, we don't have money like men. And also, when we go on the ground, we get a lot of challenges, discrimination. Some people say that hatutaki wa mama, many things. But, when you are a leader, once a leader, always a leader. You just fight for that position. And that's what we are doing on the ground, despite the challenges.
The only reason I asked is, doesn't it help that you have now a vice presidential candidate, Martha Karua, who is also standing and basically holding a very high position in terms of seeking, the higher office. Doesn't that help for women, especially at a lower level, like in your case?
Yeah, at least when Martha Karua was nominated to vie for deputy, at least it has a plus. It has given us a plus. It's not like those years when there were men's deputy president. At least this time we have confidence when Martha Karua was nominated.
Oh, that sounds very good. I would like to check also with Leah. I believe that probably we'll need to assist Joel to be able to connect.
Yeah, I know, Maria. I'm feeling so bad for Joel. I know also Daniel has been trying to get on, but I know we are working really hard to get them on the platform as speakers. I know we also have Nerima here who's with us, and if Nerima, you're able to just tap on the icon on your bottom left, you'll see a small icon there that looks like a microphone. If you tap on it, you're able to speak, Nerima, as we also wait for Joel to be able to connect. Daniel, I don't know if you're able, you can just tap also on the icon on your bottom left and you'll be able to speak. I mean, Maria, one of the things I'm noting from Fatuma and her experience is the challenges especially women face in terms of trying to vie for seats. I think she's mentioned the challenge of financing. So it means if perhaps you can be a good leader or a potential leader, but the finances are not there to support you. Fatuma, one of the things, even as we wait for Joel and Daniel to come on, and also Tundulisu, Fatuma, one of the things I would like to hear from you in terms of the fact that you are running for that seat the second time. What was your experience like in terms of, because I know most of the politicians, and you'll see it on TV, they camp at the polling stations and waiting for the votes to be counted. Fatuma, what was your experience like in the last election where you tried to run for the same seat?
Yeah, in last election, actually, I went through a lot. Sometimes when it reaches the time of counting the vote, you may get men with the gas. Maybe even you don't have even a bicycle. So you will take time to put a matatu to follow those.
Can I ask? Sorry, Fatuma. I would like to ask Leah to mute her mic. Yeah, go on.
Sometimes we get challenges.
To get a matatu? Mm-hmm.
You get a matatu, you go where the tallying station is, and that is the time. Those who have money, like the men, that is the time when your vote is being stolen. So it's so hard. It's very hard for us women. But if we get an organization that can help us to get the agents to look after our votes, we can make it. Because we normally work hard on the ground looking for votes. But during the tallying, that is where we loses our votes because of money. It's very hard. And sometimes we are being fought by those men. Unaweza ingia hata gari, unaenda huko penye mnaenda kuhesabia hizo kura, unapata umeblokiwa on your way, wameblock watu wako wale maybe ulikuwa umeajiri wale wadogo, wameblokiwa. So that is the time the votes are being stolen. So it's very hard for us women, but we are just pressing on, and we are praying God that this election, this tallying of this year, we will make a change.
Yes.
Yeah, Joel, I can see you're on.
Yes. I can speak.
Yes, please. And Leah, you can continue.
All right. Thank you, Maria.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for this particular opportunity. My name is Joel Muita. I'm the chairperson of the Youth Coordinating Committee for the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. So, number one, I would like to encourage Fatuma. All is not lost. Nothing or no one steals a vote for you because you are a woman. We've seen even in very many cases whereby even men complain that their votes have been stolen. But I want to take you through a process so that you can check how the voting is done, the process, how the process of tallying, and also the process of announcing the results. And the most crucial one, the one that usually have a lot of complaint, not even the MCA, is the presidential one. And it could be good for us also to understand what the process is so that we can know what happens in the polling station. In the Kenyan election, election is carried out by Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. That is the only body which is very independent allowed to carry out the election. So in Kenya, you are either allowed to vote as an independent candidate that you have no party, or as a candidate who belongs to a party. So when you belong to a party, you'll be given a certificate by your party that will allow you to vie in any of the political seats. So we have 6 seats based from the MCA, which is the councillor. You go to the women rep, the member of parliament, that is the MP. We also have what we call the senator, and then we also have the governor, and we also have the president. So all these particular seats are usually done in one day. And each and every political party usually have one agent in the polling station. Now, let me take you through how it is done from the voting process up to the announcement of the results. And I will take a case study of the presidential results so that is a little bit longer, which you can understand and you can tell me where the vote can be stolen. So what we are saying here, every political party usually have one agent to ensure that they get the vote. And in case of the independent candidate, they are also allowed to have their agent inside there. Now, it is very important for us to note that during the voting process in Kenya, due to the court petition which was done in 2017, the IBC Commission has resorted that they will only use the electoral register to identify the voters. Now, when a person goes to the polling station, he is first identified by the biometric kit, which is there to see if this particular person is really a voter there. And you have to present there with your original identification document, either ID or passport, which you used to register during your registration time. Now, after voting in front of when the agents are there, so you cannot do anything. The observers are there, the media are there, and everyone who is authorized by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to be in that particular polling station. And it is very important for us to understand that in voting in Kenya, the election results is final at the polling station. Now, after the voting is completed, the presiding officer who is in charge of the polling station closes the polling station and the voting starts. But before the voting starts, everyone, including the agent of different political parties and independent party, will, number one, check the people who were identified by the biometric kit. How many were identified? That is one. Number two, how many papers were plucked from the ballot book? Every ballot book has 50 sheets. So every ballot paper counts. So they will be able to know how many ballot books were used. And one ballot book contains 50 ballot papers. After knowing that, we are going to check how many votes are casted inside the ballot box. So all those particular numbers have to tally. So there is no stuffing of the ballot papers. Number two, in front of every agent, observers, and the media, the counting starts. Now, in the case of the presidential election, there is a form called Form 34A. Now, this particular Form 34A is the one that they will tally the results of the presidential candidate at the polling center, which is the lowest level of now the counting. Now, immediately after knowing, for example, now in Kenya, we have 4 presidential candidates. They will know candidate A has gotten what to candidate D. Now, this particular Form 34A, you are not allowed to leave that particular polling station before, number one, this particular result is transmitted to 2 areas. This transmission is actually going to happen if the presiding officer, together with the agents, are satisfied and everyone is given their copies, and one copy is also put outside the polling station so that anyone who wants to see what were the results at that particular polling station will know. Now, after everyone has signed, because the Form 34A is carbonated and same handwriting for all the agents who will receive that particular form, the presiding officer will send one copy to the National Tallying Center and one copy to the Constituency Tallying Center. That is those particular soft copy. After the presiding officer has done so, he will actually leave the polling station and head to the Constituency Tallying Center. Now, when this particular presiding officer reaches the Constituency Tallying Center, then the results will now be announced in front of all the agents of that particular political party, how every person in that particular constituency, especially in that particular polling station, has performed. And now, once all the Form 34As have been collected within the constituency, the constituency returning officer, who is gazetted, will tally those particular results and send a form, what we call Form 34B. So the collection of all the Form 34As in every polling station in that particular constituency will form one form we call Form 34B. Now, this Form 34B will be sent, and that is after signing by all the political agents within that particular constituency. Then it will be sent to the National Tallying Center. Now we'll have a Form 34B. And then immediately after that is done, the returning officer of that particular constituency will take the original copy of Form 34As and Form 34Bs and go to the National Tallying Center, whereby every political parties have their chief agent and they also have their agent, whereby they will be able to verify the results which are being brought by the returning officer and verify with them with the ones which were sent earlier through the electronic means. Now, when all the Form 34B are collected at the National Tallying Center, they form what we call Form 34C, that give an analysis of how all the presidential candidates have performed from number 1 to number last. In this particular sense, we are talking on number 1 up to number 4. Then after the analysis is done, we'll know who has garnered the more votes. Then the one who has garnered the more votes, he actually is being transferred to what we call Form 34D, and he's declared a winner. So the Form 34D is the certificate of a presidential candidate, and that is the presidential candidate. Now we have the president-elect. So in this particular manner, what we are even encouraging Fatuma, that you don't need to be a woman for someone to steal for you your vote. And the votes in Kenya, it is not very easy. And not every candidate is allowed to bring all their votes. We have the representative of the party. In the polling station, the agent of, for example, Kenya Kwanza or Azimio Coalition will only have one agent who will check the presidential ballot and also the lowest, which is the member of the county assembly. So one agent oversees all. So if I'm in a party and I even don't have money, the person who is manning the presidential ballot papers will also be the person who will be manning my vote at the MCA level. So I think it is a matter of strategy and ensuring that you can even have a pool of volunteers who will enable you to ensure that your votes are well protected. And thank you. I've seen even my mentor Tunduliso is here on the call. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Joel, for that introduction. I really want to come very soon to Tundulisu. But before one thing I want to hear from Daniel, because I know Daniel has been working in the field of governance in Kenya. I mean, Daniel, there's been a lot of, cases where in the past, every election in Kenya, there's always allegations of rigging, perhaps the issue of voter bribery, just allegations of such kind have been emerging in Kenya. Daniel, in your view, as a governance expert, would you say that the vote counting and verification process that we have in Kenya, the one that also Joel is talking about, that the IEBC is helping to manage, is really able to deliver a free and fair election, in your view, Daniel, given, like I've mentioned, the allegations that more usually just emerge in every election?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Sorry for the hiccups that I had, to joining this space. I think the question that begs today is on election voter tallying. I think we are giving a critique to the credibility of electoral processes in Africa. And the case study that we've just had is a Kenyan situation. But allow me, first of all, to begin by notifying that there are elections, like our colleague mentioned before we start, that Sub-Saharan Africa are witnessing over 25 elections between now and probably by mid next year, there'll be countries that are going through elections. We have seen in these countries where electoral processes ideally should be a process where leaders are, promulgated, because that let me say that through a constitutional term, where leaders are given authority and mandate, and the citizens recycle vote their leaders. In other terms, elections become a point where voters legitimize the people who are going to govern and to rule them. So beneath this is the issues of electoral justice, electoral reforms. And since this is a Pan-African platform, before I come to Kenyan situation, as we speak, we are seeing that in our West African countries, where democracy has been thrown apart and government of the day is replaced by a military rule, all these in the pretense or in the guise that democracy, elections, the outcome of electoral processes cannot be trusted, and therefore military rules and overthrow the constitution and restate a new rule. We have seen our friends here in Uganda, where electoral processes have become a point of violence, where Bobby Wine and the rest are scampering for safety. Down here in our neighboring countries in Tanzania, and I'm glad Tindi Lucy is here, where electoral processes becomes a point of battlefield, and people are scampering for safety in other countries. Ideally, this is not what we should be seeing in African state. And therefore, allow me to come back to the issue of Kenya. In retrospect, we have seen the Kenyan electoral processes beginning from Electoral Commission of Kenya in 2007 that birthed a bloodbath after post-electoral violence. What was that? It was casting aspersion on the credibility, on the trust of an electoral and management body. By that time, the Electoral Commission of Kenya. Then the transition of 2013, the Isaka-san Commission. And then now that this one that was midwifed by two political parties, by that time in two political factions agreeing to volunteer their panels to give us now a commission. But you see, I am apprehensive of these mixed reactions and mixed communication we are having from electoral body. And my good friend Joel Mwita, who represents the youth in this committee of IEBC and chairs a noble process, I tend to take diversions, definitely when we begin to hear mixed reactions from the pronouncement of the chair of the Independent Election and Environment Commission. I think as early as these, and political parties have raised their concern, mixed reactions, mixed signals, mixed responses. So this begs the question whether we elaborately and eloquently explain the procedures of electoral procedures from the polling stream to the polling station, to the constituency tallying center, to the county tallying center, and to the national tallying center in Bomas, and the forms of 34s and 35s. The question is simple that I keep on putting to this. If, as a scale of 1 to 10 Kenyans are asked to give their vote on the current Electoral Commission of Kenya, and people's views are legitimate as the electoral outcome itself. So for me, IEBC has done a lot of reforms, but IEBC needs to get their act in order to convince the public of a credible electoral outcome that is trusted, that is peaceful. The other thing, as I conclude, Leah, beyond the electoral laws in this country, there are other laws that are intersectional. In every electoral commission of every electoral management body in Africa, not only in Kenya, that first of all, the integrity of an electoral commission. Secondly, what are other allied laws? What does the commission say about the candidates and the presidential, from the presidential to the members of county assembly, if they involve in violence? If there is a perception, whether real or perceived, that they are mobilizing their voters to conflict, what about that? What is the credibility of their integrity, even within the chapter 6 of the Constitution of Kenya? So for me, I see this as a holistic, not only on the process and the procedure of election, because election is not a one-time thing, is a process. Thank you, Leah, and I submit.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for those remarks. Tundu Lissu, I know the issue of, stories of election rigging, issues are around, like I know Daniel has mentioned some of them, just the credibility of these institutions that carry out the elections in terms of handling the voting, the announcement of the results. Tundu Lissu, what's really your take, especially when you look at the Kenyan aspect and also just in your country? How is it in Tanzania when it comes to elections and just the trust of faith that Tanzanians have in the electoral body in your country? Tundu Lissu.
Hello, Leah.
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation. And secondly, please allow me to recognize the presence of some good friends in here. Kaka yangu Joel Mwita. Kaka Joel, if you hear me, please say hello to my uncle, Professor Chacha Nyaigoti na familia.
I will say that. Kabisa nitasema.
Also, please allow me to recognize the presence of Shangazi Maria Sarungi Sehai. And Shangazi Maria has been exceptional in the sense in which she has led the debate on democracy and good governance in Tanzania, and I would like to salute her.
Thank you, Lissu.
Please also allow me to recognize the presence of Kaka George Mwaura. Kaka Mwaura is maybe Kenyan by nationality, but his soul is in Tanzania because he's always with us in discussing our problems, our fate as a nation and a neighbor of Kenya, and therefore I'm happy to see him here. Kaka Mwaura, I salute you.
Thank you, Honorable Lissu. Asante sana.
I see some good friends here, many other good friends. I may not be able to recognize you by name, but please accept my salutations as well. Now, the subject is, does the vote count? And that is what I want to spend a bit of my time here. And I will focus specifically on the case of Tanzania, which I know best. I'm a very keen follower of Kenyan politics. I'm always fascinated and inspired by Kenyan politics. You may want to know that. But since most of you here are Kenyans, I prefer to listen to Kenya when it comes to questions of elections involving Kenya. And so let me focus on Tanzania, which I know best. Votes are supposed to count. Elections matter. And political processes such as elections do matter greatly. I don't need to belabor the point. Elections matter greatly. And because elections matter, those who go to vote and what they do at polling booths are supposed to matter greatly. Unfortunately, in Tanzania, which I've said I want to focus on, elections and votes may not have counted as much in determining our governance, in determining who become the people who are charged with leading the nation, with exercising political power on behalf of the voters, on behalf of the Wananchi. It is very common to focus on what happens on the processes of elections and what happens during the registration of voters, nomination of candidates, the conduct of election campaigns, voting, vote counting, and declaring of results. There is always a big focus on those areas. And it is right that those areas, those important areas, be focused on, because they determine who, at the end of the electoral process, is declared winner or loser. So the processes, those electoral processes, which are very common to us all, are very important, and they should be looked at critically. Today, please allow me to focus on an equally important, if not more important, question, which is hardly ever looked at when we think of elections. And that is the subject which I call institutional rigging, institutional theft of votes. In other words, decisions which are taken by institutions, particularly by the election management bodies, in our case, the National Electoral Commission, which decisions have a huge impact in the outcomes of the elections. And these are areas which as I intend to show soon, these are areas which are not given adequate attention when they are actually, in my view, they are absolutely important to the outcome of the elections. At least they have been crucial in the outcomes of Tanzanian elections. Now, first of all, we have to be aware of the fact that Tanzania's electoral system, and I suspect that of Kenya and Uganda and many other common law countries. Common law countries are those countries which were under British colonial rule, the Commonwealth. Our country's electoral systems are based on what is called first past the post. In other words, a person who obtains more votes than other candidates, the candidate who obtains more votes than other candidates, is declared winner, regardless of the margin of victory. If he obtains one more vote than the second closest candidate, the one with more vote is declared the winner, and the one with one vote less loses everything. So the first past the post system is, in my view, one of our major problems. Institutional rigging starts on the basis of the electoral system that we use. I will give you some numbers from Tanzania just to illustrate my point. During the last general election, or what passed for the general election, it was perhaps the most fraudulent election in our entire history. But let's just use the numbers given by the National Electoral Commission of Tanzania, and which just show the evils of the first past the post system. According to the National Electoral Commission, the opposition, the ruling party obtained, I'm talking of percentages, obtained about 81%, 80 or thereabout, 80% of the total parliamentary vote. 80%. Now, that 80% that the ruling party obtained, 80% of the total parliamentary vote, it gave the ruling party approximately 99% of the total parliamentary votes. Out of the 393 parliamentary seats in Tanzania's parliament after the last general election, the ruling party came out with 366 seats, roughly 98 thereabout percent. The opposition, which obtained a total of roughly 20% of the total parliamentary vote, was given a total of 27 seats out of 393. Make the numbers. Now, there are countries whose electoral system is based on proportional representation. Had it been the case in Tanzania, had we had the proportional representation as opposed to first past the post, the 20% of the total parliamentary vote that the opposition got would have entitled the opposition parties to some 75 seats out of the total of 393. Instead, they got 27 seats, something like 48 seats less. And no one, at least very few people in Tanzania who follow Tanzanian elections, have ever questioned the effect of the first past the post on representation. So clearly, the vote of 20% of the electorate gave Tanzania much less representation of opposition parties than it would have been the case had it been had the electoral system been based on proportional representation. I will give you one final example before I move on to the second instance of institutional rigging, rigging that is based on the electoral system. That is what I call institutional rigging. The second example comes from the 2015 general elections. Now, the 2015 general elections was the best for the opposition in our entire history. In that election, the opposition, the combined opposition, obtained a total number of 117 seats out of a total of 393, roughly 30% of the total. But its parliamentary vote, the total parliamentary vote for the combined opposition in 2015 was 45% of the total. So 45% of the Tanzanian voters voted for opposition parliamentary candidates. They got 117 parliamentary seats, roughly 30%. Had the case been, what would the case have been with proportional representation? And my numbers tell me that had proportional representation been applied across the board during the 2015 general elections, the opposition parties would have been entitled to 177 seats out of the 393 total parliamentary seats. 177 is 45% of the total seats. But because of the first past the post electoral system, the opposition parties got 60 seats less than they would have been entitled to had our electoral system been based on a proportional representation. Now, so that is one. That is one instance of what I call, and I think in Tanzania it has been a serious problem. The amazing thing is it has been almost completely not been commented on by our commentators on our politics and our elections. And I dare say, in fact, even the political parties which have been affected most by this system have hardly made a voice. And I think that is one thing that maybe we need to seriously talk about going forward. Now, what is the second instance of institutional bias, institutional rigging of elections? It is what is called malapportionment of electoral constituencies. I will explain. Tanzania has a total of 26 regions, and I speak here of mainland Tanzania. I'm not speaking of Zanzibar because Zanzibar represents a very unique case in itself. I'm talking about mainland Tanzania. So mainland Tanzania is divided up into 26 regions. You Kenyans call them counties nowadays. You call them provinces in the past. Now, out of these 26 regions, the National Electoral Commission has demarcated some 214 constituencies, electoral constituencies. So you have 214 electoral constituencies in Tanzania mainland's 26 regions. Now, these 26 constituencies are divided on these the 26 regions, and this is where the problem begins. Now, the problem here is the most heavily populated regions of Tanzania have been assigned less constituencies than the most sparsely populated regions. What I'm saying is the regions of Tanzania with the highest number of registered voters have less, on average, have less constituencies than the least populated regions. Now, I'll give you some numbers from the 2020 general elections. And in my case here, I have taken the 10 out of the 26 regions, the 10 most heavily populated regions and the 10 least populated regions. Now, what is the number of constituencies in the 10 most heavily populated regions of Tanzania? Firstly, these 10 most heavily populated regions in 2020 general elections had a total of about 16 million registered voters, over 55% of the total number of registered voters in Tanzania mainland. So 10 regions accounted for 55% of the total registered voters. Now, these 10 regions with 55% of the voters were assigned a total of 94 constituencies out of 214, which is about 44% of the total number of constituencies. So you have 55% of total registered voters equals 44% of electoral constituencies. What is the story? What is the story of the 10 least populated regions in the country? These 10 least populated regions had a combined total of nearly 7 million registered voters during the 2020 general elections. That is roughly about 24% of the total number of registered voters. Now, what were their constituency allocations in the 2020 elections? The 10 least populated regions had 69 constituencies, or 32% of the total number of constituencies in Tanzania mainland. So 24% equals 24% of registered voters in these regions equals 32% of the constituencies in the country. The remaining 6 regions, I have said there are 26 regions. The remaining 6 regions are in the middle. They are between the 10 heavily populated regions and the 10 least populated regions. These 6 middling regions accounted for a total of slightly over 6 million registered voters, or roughly 21% of the total. But they were assigned the remaining 51 constituencies, or about 24% of all elective seats in Tanzania mainland. And therefore, to conclude on this point, the 10 regions with a population with registered voters of 55% had only 44% of the total electoral constituencies, while 16 regions with a combined total of 45% of registered voters had 56% of electoral constituencies. So on the basis of these numbers, more is clearly less, and less is evidently more. The more registered numbers you have, the less constituencies, electoral constituencies you are allocated, and the less the number of your registered voters, the more the electoral constituencies. A serious case of overrepresentation of least populated regions and gross underrepresentation of heavily populated regions. So, if we are talking of votes being made to count, clearly the principle in Tanzania cannot be and has not been one man equals one vote. There are places in Tanzania where certain votes carry more weight than other votes. If you are a voter in a region with a high number of registered voters, your vote is likely to count for less. That is the number. That is the second instance. That is the second instance of institutional vote rigging. And if you look at the literature on Tanzanian elections, I will dare anyone to give me a single instance in which this grave situation has been raised and debated, both in academic literature as well as in political discourse. And this is where, in my view, these are areas where there are major problems. This is one area where we should have concentrated on from day one. Now, the third. Let me just finish quickly the third point.
All right.
The third instance of institutional rigging. It is rural versus urban voting. Rural versus urban. Now, I will give you a very quick example here so that you give the floor to other voters and to other speakers. Dar es Salaam is the most populated region in Tanzania. It is the biggest city in the country. It has more voters, more registered voters than any other region or urban center in Tanzania. Now, in the 2020 general elections, Dar es Salaam had a total of some 3.4 million registered voters. And those 3.4 million registered voters were distributed to 10 electoral constituencies. 10 constituencies are for Dar es Salaam with 3.4 million voters. Now, that number of registered voters for Dar es Salaam equals the number of registered voters of the 6 least populated regions in Tanzania. If you look at the statistics given by the National Electoral Commission on registered voters per region, the the 6 regions with the lowest number of registered voters combined also had 3.4 million voters. Now, compared to Dar es Salaam with 10 constituencies, these 6 regions had a combined total of 37 constituencies, nearly 4 times bigger than the number of constituencies in Dar es Salaam. The average registered voter, the average constituency in Dar es Salaam had 342,000 registered voters, while the average number of registered voters in the 6 regions with the lowest number of voters was about 93,000, slightly over 1/4 of the Dar es Salaam constituencies. And that is to say, so you have a clear case of rural, and the story basically goes, if you look at Arusha, Arusha, which is the 3rd largest city, Mwanza the 2nd, Tanga, Mbeya, and other urban areas of Tanzania. So you have a serious case of rural bias when it comes to demarcating electoral districts. Now, these are institutional problems. They are institutional problems which require, number one, constitutional change, because our constitution has not stipulated that the principle should be a population parity. The principle in demarcating constituencies should be based on population parity. That is not what our constitution stipulates. So you clearly need a constitutional reform insofar as representation is concerned. And secondly, you also need the Electoral Commission. There are very serious issues with the way the electoral system demarcates electoral constituencies, and all these are issues that require reform. So that is the story that I wanted to share with you tonight. It is important that we focus on issues of the last 2-3 months of the election cycle, the issues of voter registration, issues of nomination of candidates, which have been serious problems in Tanzania, issues of the conduct of campaigns, voting, counting, and declaration of results. All those areas are absolutely important, but we should not forget, like we have done for far too long, the fact that rigging starts way before the election period, election time comes on the horizon. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share these thoughts with you. Asante.
Asante
Thank
sana.
you. Thank you, Tundulisu. Thank you so much. That is so much insight, Maria, regarding Tanzania and the challenges, the institutional rigging. Wonderful. I can only say wonderful. Thank you so much, Tundulisu. I know Joseph Kalimbo is with us today, and we've had, and I know Daniel also mentioned in terms of his witnessing of what has been happening in Kenya, mentioned issues of rigging, and I know he posed a very tough question, perhaps to Joel Muita of IBC, just telling him perhaps it's time the IBC owned up and began to become a bit maybe transparent in issues of elections. But Joseph Kalimbwe from the UPND party, the opposition, the former opposition party, I would say, of Zambia, and we do know Kalimbwe, the opposition had tried so many times to get into power through its party, UPND. And finally, now we have a leader in Zambia who was born from an opposition party. Joseph, just to help us understand, we've heard of issues of rigging from Kenya. We've heard from Tundu Lissu of Tanzania talking about how the system is definitely not fair, in his view, that it does not necessarily produce fair, results because of the way the system is. But Joseph, what's the experience like in Zambia? And how are you able to overcome some of the challenges, if at all you did meet any challenges of rigging, any allegations of rigging and whatnot?
Well, thank you. First of all, I'm really thankful for coming here to speak and share ideas, particularly with Africans who will be going into elections like we did last year. In a Zambian perspective, our party, the United Party for National Development, had been in the opposition since 1998. So we had been in a painstakingly long process of fighting to get into government for 23 years. And during those years, there were times that elections were rigged, and we did not agree with the pronouncements of the Electoral Commission of Zambia, because we knew that there were instances where elections had been won, but a wrong winner had been announced. And the problem that happens in Zambia, I don't believe it happens in Zambia alone. It happens in so many countries within the African continent. But we needed to counter that after failing, particularly with our president, our party president, President Hakainde Hichilema, after failing for 5 times. We needed to draw better lessons from those failures. And one of the lessons that we drew from failing to be declared as a new ruling party in 2006, we had the election then, and we did not win. We had the election in 2008, and we did not win. We had the election again in 2011, and we didn't win. And we had another one in 2016, and we didn't win. So we are coming from a backdrop of a series of failures. And we needed to learn from those failures and draw better examples from them. And so one of the things that we did when we were going into the election in 2021 was that, what were the issues that made us not to be declared winners? We didn't believe that in 2016 we had lost. And so there was a court challenge that we had mounted to say we did not believe President Edgar Lungu won the election fair and square. Because the numbers and the tallying, we believe that we had a fair chance of being announced as winners. But then the Electoral Commission of Zambia decided to announce another man as winner, and the constitution, everything was announced, and even when we went to court, the challenge was brought down, and we couldn't. But then from those failures that we had in 2006 and the years that followed, we needed to learn better lessons from that. So what we did is that if we were going to win the election in Zambia, we needed to win with huge margins. We needed to win to such an extent that it makes it very difficult for the former ruling party to rig the election. And so we came out with a strategy to say we need to mobilize as many young people as possible. We needed to speak to their aspirations. And I believed, and I still believe now, that the challenges that the young people of Zambia faced then and they are still facing now are not different from the challenges that young people in Mwanza, for instance, in Tanzania are facing, or in Mbeya. It's the same. Also, it's the same challenges that young people in Kisumu, for instance, in Kenya are facing, or in Nairobi or Mombasa. It's the same challenges that young people face in Lusaka, in Dola, or any other town in Zambia. So we went out to speak to the aspirations and the struggles of the masses of our young people, the ones that had felt the pain and frustrations of a failed Zambian economy, and the president that couldn't inspire them around the struggles that they were facing. So we told them that go and register to vote in your masses. We went out, members of the now ruling party, myself and some of my colleagues, we went out to mobilize the masses of our young people. These are the struggles that we are facing. There's high unemployment. We have issues of electricity cuts. We have issues where the masses of our people do not have access to free basic education. And so we needed to speak to their aspirations, their struggles, the things that concern them. And so after that, we mobilized millions of young people to go and register to vote. After registering to vote, we set out to go out and have a constant agitation of ideas, to go and meet them, because our politics had become very toxic to such an extent that we were no longer, engaging in ideas. It was just a politics of nepotism where our people had been lined up like they are beggars, like complete Zambian beggars. That is what the politics that we were coming from. It was very toxic. You no longer engage on ideas. You no longer speak about issues of the economy or the political space that we are facing. And so we mobilized young people, many of them in their 20s, many of them in their 30s and in their early 40s, because we needed them to understand. Like a young person would come and speak to them. But we also had challenges because we are coming from the opposition. When it comes to meeting and having engagements, we are being blocked. And so we went out to ensure that we mobilized the masses of our young people in their numbers. And we had about 3.9 Zambian youths registering to vote. I was hearing the statistics from Mr. Tundu Lissu, and the statistics in Tanzania and Zambia are quite different because the number of voters is quite lower in Zambia, and that has to do with our population as well. But the challenges that we face are the same, and so we mobilized them to go and register to vote. After registering to vote, we knew that if we don't put another strategy, we're going to lose the election again. So we needed to go and defend the vote after the registration had been done. So the masses of our young people went out to go and vote on the day of voting. So from a party, we went out to mobilize. And after mobilizing, we told the masses of our people to say, this isn't just about the ruling party. This isn't just about my party, the UPND. It's about every Zambian that knows that their country can change. And so we told them to also help us to mobilize, because when you're in the opposition, you don't have the same kind of financial backing as the ruling party. And so we didn't have that. We didn't have the money that the ruling party had. We know where they were going and bribing people in anticipation of votes. And so we told the masses of our people that you are the only weapons that we have. Your voters' cards are the only weapons that you have to bring about a change that is required in our country. And so after doing that, we went to defend the vote. Part of defending the vote was that we needed to stay there at the polling stations to watch each and every step that was going on, because we are very eager to change the political space of our country and ensure that that kind of toxic politics changes. And so we defended the vote in each and every part of the country. And we knew that in our strongholds, we had strongholds and strongholds of the former ruling party. So we needed to win with huge margins in our strongholds. And then maybe when we lose, we must lose with lower margins in their strongholds. And so we were beating Edgar Lungu with about, he would get 210 votes. And our candidate, presidential candidate, would get 48,000 votes in our strongholds. In his strongholds, our party would get perhaps 5,000 and he would get 20. So the margin would be just basically 15,000. Well, in our strongholds, the margin would be like almost 45,000. And so we went to defend the vote. After defending the vote, what happened at the end of the day was that the opposition was declared as winners, and we were able now to get into government after 23 years of fighting in the trenches of the opposition. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Joseph. Maria, I see you have something to say.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that these are some valuable lessons, I think, for any politician who's been listening about the youth vote. And I think that most of the time that is one of the challenges that definitely comes up, which is mobilizing the youth. The youth usually get very enthusiastic, especially for online discussions and even taking part in some of the rallies. But do they actually go and get to vote, or do they just remain as basically audience? That is a huge challenge. I think that maybe also, Leah, is just to pick up a bit more maybe from the audience and also getting a bit more responses from Joel as well. Fatuma, you've turned on your mic. Did you want to say something? Fatuma Namati? Okay, I think maybe it was accidental. Yes, so Leah, I was thinking one of the things that was said by Lissu around institutional rigging and about some of the other factors that can contribute toward actually not making every vote count. I thought that this could be something interesting, taking into consideration that Daniel also had some well, some reservations that maybe is good for Joel to respond to.
I actually agree with you. It will be good to hear from you, Joel.
Thank you so much. So maybe I can answer as follow in regards to election rigging and the independence of the institution which is conducting the election. Number one, it is important to note that elections are governed by the law, and electoral laws are very procedural. They guide you on whatever thing that you need to do, and it gives you very clear timelines on what to do, when, and how. Number two, that in Kenya, the commission that is mandated to do the election is also mandated to do boundaries delimitation. So it has a specific formula on how they can divide a constituency, they can divide the county, and how they can divide a ward. They just don't wake up and just divide, unlike maybe some other countries. But for Kenya, it is very clear in terms of how they're going to do the things. Number three, that in Kenya, we see that IEBC is the most fair institution in terms of employment in the country. And that is what Dr. Tundu was talking about, proportional representation, both at the permanent staff and also the temporal staff, who are basically usually hired to do an election or a by-election, or to ensure that when they are doing the boundary allocation, then some hired staff are actually recruited in. But there is also a formula on how even to recruit staffs of the Electoral Boundaries Commission, that is IEBC. Why am I putting this? I want to put in perspective, as it has been indicated by my earlier speakers, that election is not only stolen during the tallying, but it is a whole process about the institutions, the people conducting the election, and what governs the rules of the election. And this is what we are talking about, that the independence of the institution is very key in ensuring that we also have a peaceful and credible election. Now, I always say that election is all about people, and it is people who will make the election either credible, peaceful, or not at all. And in this sense, if we are talking in the context of Kenyan election, that out of the people who are going to conduct the election, around 450,000, we have around 400,000 temporal staff. These are our brothers, these are our sisters, these are our cousins, the people surrounding us. So, and these are people who actually come from our community, not a person, not a foreigner who is actually coming to govern our election. So if elections are credible, it depicts a country. What are the people in that particular country? And you see, in our context here, that a person from a different ward, nadhani Tanzania tunaita tarafa, Maria Shangazi anaweza akanikosoa ama vipi, hauwezi ukatoka tarafa nyingine ama kata nyingine kwenda kufanya uchaguzi kwenye kata nyingine ama tarafa nyingine mbali na jimbo. Kwa hiyo lazima watu ambao wanafanya hiyo election wao watu wa kutoka katika hilo eneo. And in this particular sense, we are talking about in terms of registration to vote, the casting of the vote, the counting of the vote, the tallying of the results, and the announcing of the results. Now, step 1 to step 3 are usually very clear. And in this sense is what we are calling that what is happening at the polling station where the election are final. When the people have already registered, now the two important aspect is now the casting of your vote and also the counting of your vote. Now, in the polling station, and this is how this thing is extremely difficult to steal, not unless kila mtu kwenye hiyo polling station ni zuzu, kila mtu amekubali kuhongwa na watu wote wamesema to rig election. Now, in a Kenyan contest, inside the polling station, whereby you will not have more than 700 votes, we have the following people. We have 6 clerks, we have 1 deputy presiding officer, we have 1 presiding officer. In a nutshell, these are already 8 officials. We have election observers, we have the media who have been allowed to take the photos of the results inside the polling station and even announce it to people. But the only thing that they cannot do is just to declare the results. We have the agent of all the political parties participating in that particular election, accredited to sit in that particular polling station. We have security officers who have actually even come up with the rules and procedures on how to govern themselves and the code of conduct on how they behave outside the polling station. Now, election after the tallying has been done, in Kenya, election is basically manual. The electoral transmission is just a backup to enhance the credibility of that particular election. In the ruling of 2017 within the High Court during the nullification of our presidential election, it was decided that the national returning officer, who is the chairperson of the commission, will not be able to announce the results until the physical copies from all the constituencies have reached the National Tallying Center. And all those particular things happen in front of the agents, in front of the observers, the media, and also the electoral officials. Now, I want to give a 3 scenario of the last intense by-election conducted in Kenya, and they were actually concluded just before now when we started preparing the general election. Election number 1, which was done in Msambweni, we have seen that an independent candidate in the coastal region, where a dominant party, ODM, with almost all elected leaders coming from that particular place, we see an independent candidate winning, beating the most popular party in that particular region. Number 2, we had Juja election where Chama Chakazi, a candidate, winning, beating a candidate of a ruling party. We've seen in Kiambaa constituency, just a few months before our general election, we've seen a UDA candidate winning, beating a ruling party candidate, which is Jubilee. And Nerima Wako here, where we work in the same committee as my vice chairperson, we've really taken a lot of time to ensure that we sensitize young people and also the public at large on the full process of the electoral cycle, and saying that every person has a role to play in ensuring that we have a peaceful, credible, and verifiable election. And if we are not taking care, if we can, everyone is ethical and everyone stands the ground and say that we are going to ensure that this particular election is not going to be interfered with whatsoever, then that one is going to take place. And as I conclude saying that election is about the people of the Republic of Kenya. I've seen even Daniel, who is also my friend here, championing, and he was also a candidate, knowing the process of this particular election, then it is us to blame and not the commission. Most of the work is just to do the tallying, and it is done, the tallying is done in front of everyone. So I would want to urge everyone that this particular process, let's join hands together, and it is the people who can change this particular electoral process. And I can see Shangazi and Honorable Tunduliso fighting that there will not be an election in Tanzania if there is no a new constitution which also gives a very clear mandate to the electoral board and ensure that the electoral board is independent. And these are the people who are making changes, and we want to urge everyone to join everyone's hands to ensure that all the things that we say and fight for are actually realized during the election. I think I can raise my hand from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Joel. I really do want to go to, one of the other speakers, and I'll just allow them to stay there for just 1 minute. But Joel, I know there's been a lot of allegations of rigging in every election in Kenya. There's always allegations of rigging. But then the question is, if the IEBC has such a credible process towards vote counting, vote tallying, and just ensuring that the whole process is credible and fair, then where do these allegations come from? And secondly, have you perhaps interacted with any case where there was confirmed rigging of an election in Kenya as an official of the IEBC? I know it's probably a hard question, but we'd like to hear, some bit of this other side of the story, because it sounds like everything is really good in Kenya in terms of the IEBC taking care of the credibility of elections. But really, where then do these allegations of rigging come from? And does rigging actually happen in elections in Kenya? That's a question I'm posing to you, Joel.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad you said there are allegations, and it is good in every place you will also get allegations, including even in our own houses. Even our mothers and also our parents are even accused on the things that they have not done, which is very normal. And what we can as well say that all over the world, it is very rare to get a completely perfect election. Even the nullification of 2017 election, it was not about the votes were stolen. It was all about did you follow the procedures and the due process to ensure that you've conducted this particular election. If you are able to announce the results before you got all the forms and you just relied on the forms which were transmitted electronically, is that what was provided in the law? So and I can tell you, in many instances, not even in other spaces, you find that if the losers usually have an excuse, but I don't want to condemn them or say something against that. I've seen an instances whereby people have suffered because of election, and I can say that election is also in terms of how IEBC has been evolving and conducting itself. It has been putting proper measures to ensure that they bar everyone. And now you can see that what it has even done, it has even ensured that it has accredited all the media houses that you are allowed inside a polling station where all this particular process is actually done and final at that particular stage. So all those particular issues and allegation of election, and as I can say that you can't miss to find a rotten potato in a bucket. You can find maybe one or two presiding officers who have very cheeky behaviors and have collided with one or two people to do malpractices within the electoral time. So those ones are very rare cases, and even the laws really says what you need to do in case of, and also the punishment that is actually being done. Unlike what Akina Shangazi and Bob Chacha Wangwe are fighting in Tanzania, whereby the institution which is conducting the election is part of the government and the actual appointee of the president. So in our case, it is completely an independent constitution, commission, whereby they draw their mandate from the people, and the people are the ones who are actually giving them what to ensure that they do, and they're guided by the Constitution of Kenya and the laws. And as we have said, the electoral laws are very procedural in Kenya. So those particular cases, I can assure our listeners that it is all about people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joel. I'd like to open up the floor quickly to a few of our listeners. I know we have Rosemary Musumba. Rosemary, I want to give you an opportunity to comment on tonight's discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much, moderator. I mean, I had requested, but I didn't think there were so many people online. I wasn't sure I would get the chance. Hii ni bahati kubwa kabisa. Nawasalimia kwa jina la Mwenyezi Mungu. My name is Rosemary Musumba, as has been said by the moderator. I live here in New York. Na kuchangia discussion ya leo ambayo inasema kuwa elections or voter tallying, does the vote count in Africa? As far as I'm concerned, it does. I was on Twitter Space yesterday with a group of youth, and one of the things that I challenged them, a lot of them were standing on the fence, and they were saying, really, my vote doesn't count. Really, we need to change that narrative. We may be disappointed. I'm disappointed at my age, and I'm a senior citizen. I'm disappointed with many things. But what I always do is pick myself up, dust off, as President Obama said, and you start again. You have to keep trying. Ikija kwa mambo ya elections, let me give you a quick example. When I was doing graduate work in the UK many years ago, and that was the first time the South African election was being conducted, I had the university I was going to is called University of Sussex. I had there was a special scholarship, Nelson Mandela, and there were some South Africans who were benefiting from that. I found a group of them in the cafeteria, talking like, oh, why waste time, travel all the way to London to vote and what have you. Nikawaambia, vijana, we have been fighting, and I can say Africa and the world, particularly Africa, kuna vitu tuligomea hata kununua kwenye supermarket because we wanted to send a very strong message to South Africa, to the regime at the time. We were standing with our brothers and sisters ambao wamekandamizwa. So what I was telling them, mujibebe siku hiyo in groups. Go to the embassy and vote. Sisi hapa, I still feel I'm not really owed by IBC. I have a problem with them, like all of us. Lakini it is what it is. We have to work with what we have. Wametukubalia to register at the embassies, and the embassies are scattered. They are, kule ambao kuna Wakenya wengi kama kina Minnesota, Texas, wapi, they did not register. So I still feel kuwa in our own case in Africa and Kenya, leading by example, we need to set an example. Tusiwe na violence. Manake ile kitu ambayo ilifanyika 2007, 2008, that has gone down in the history. We should never, all of us, allow ourselves to play our part. We should never have that sort of thing repeated again, where civilians, people, mtu hana kosa lote, kosa ni kuwa on the street na ame exercise right yake. So to come back, does the vote count in Africa? It does count. Yes, it does. Na lazima sote tujibebe, play our role. Nimesikia ndugu yangu mmoja hapa akizungumza, akipeana example ya Tanzania. How have they worked it out? They have used a language, Kiswahili, as a unifying language for all of them. They are proud. Ukikutana na Mtanzania kokote, hata kama ni professor, airport yoyote, ukimuuliza, ndugu habari gani? Ala, unasema Kiswahili. They are so proud, unlike Kenyans. And I don't care what accent you have in Kenya, whether it's a Kikuyu accent or Luya accent like myself or whatever, it doesn't matter. Hiyo inatuleta pamoja, ni undugu. Hata kudiscipline mtoto, unasema unataka uzungumze kwa lugha ya mama, lakini when it comes to the voting, ndugu zanguni, na waomba sote tujitokeze, let us play our role, tupige kura. Kitu cha pili, let us encourage our youth ambao they are feeling so disenfranchised, wanasema hawana makazi and their vote doesn't count, wherever you are. Na tukiwa tumebakia na siku ni less than a month kupiga kura, let us encourage our people kuwa we have a role to play. All of us, si masikini, si tajiri, si mwenye gari ama sio mlemavu, si kipofu, sote we have a role to play and let us play it. Mimi ni mtu wa Azimio na nawaomba mpigie Azimio. Asanteni.
Rosemary, thank you for those comments. Clearly, you have made it clear to us or your political inclination. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for your comments. I see Maura Robert would like to contribute to the discussion today. Maura, you can go ahead.
Okay, hello. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Maura.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Joseph for what they did in Zambia, and I hope I was supporting somebody in Zambia in Dudumwezi in the south. And HH got that constituent 27,800, and Rungu got only 262. So that was well done, Joseph, and keep the good work up. Now, let me go to our Kenya's IEBC. I think the problem with the Kenya's IEBC is that they have all the rule and everything. The problem with them is lack of integrity. And I'm going to prove that. In petition number 207 of 2016 was one minor Kiai plus two others. And they had filed a case and which they won against the IBC, whereby it was decided that the presidential election should be held at the constituency level. What do I mean by that? Let's say in my constituency, Gatodo South, if presidential candidate A got 20 votes, presidential candidate B got 12 votes, President candidate C got 5 votes. Now that is what will stand. The chair of the IBC at Bomas can never change those unless a court of law is one that can alter those figures. And the IBC was never satisfied with that ruling. They appealed in the civil appeal number 105 of 2017. And before 5-bench judge Ouko, Kiage, Murgo, and others, who delivered a judgment on 23rd of June 2017, they upheld the ruling of the High Court, three High Court judges, that the presidential election is conducted at the constituency level. That's why no. Now, I don't want to go into details about the assassination of Chris Musando, the IBC, ICT chief, and such. But since the petition was lodged against the winning Jubilee candidate, and the election of Uhuru Kenyatta was nullified, in that petition, there was something that the Supreme Court ordered the IBC to do, and up to date, they have never done. Up to today. That's why up to today, we don't know who won the 8th of August 2017 election. The Supreme Court ordered that the servers of IBC be opened, and they have refused up to date to open those servers up to today. And what shocks me enough up to today is that Wafula Chebukati, who was the chairman at that time, is still the chairman of IEBC today, despite him failing to comply with the orders of the Supreme Court. Now, that puts me in a very awkward position because I don't know what will happen this time around. If Chebukati and his team could not obey Supreme Court orders to open the servers, and now he is still the chairman today, I don't know what they are intending to do this time. So I can say the system are okay in Kenya, the law is very good, but as Kenya's Chief Justice Emeritus, David Kenani Maraga, who nullified that election of win of Uhuru, said, election is a process and not an event. And they couldn't, the lawyers for IBC and Uhuru Kenyatta couldn't answer some very critical questions during that appeal. Number one of the questions, how came the winner Uhuru was voted by 600,000 voters who voted for no other candidate other than him? And the lawyers were asked, how do you treat those voters? Because when you get into a polling station in Kenya, you are given 6. Or you vote for MCA, you vote for MP, you vote for women rep, for sometimes you vote for the president and also for the governor. And you decide only to use one. So what happens with the 5? Where do they go? They couldn't explain that. There was also an issue of some forms that had no serial number. You can imagine that. A voting form that had no serial number, and then it was just accepted. How do you explain that? So I think the problem is about integrity of IBC officials. And I beg you, people of IBC, if you are listening to me, please try and conduct yourself with dignity. Give us Kenyans a free and credible election this time. Don't try to play any. Thank you. Thank you. Hello?
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much,
Maura.
Yeah.
Before I go to another speaker, I'd like to pose a question to you, Daniel. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, sorry about that. So my question is basically, what would you say are the top factors that influence voting in Kenya?
Thorny question. One, tribe. Secondly, political affiliations. And third is on the money bags that goes around during elections. I will be brief because Maura had actually, spoken my mind, because that is the response that I was going to have. But Leah, I have written opinions on why I think that there is not enough reforms and electoral reforms in Kenya. And a number of times again, I have said this, and it's been confirmed by the speakers, that the conduct of election and the electoral processes must be very, immune to some things, must be very immune to, external interference, must be very immune to political mechanization, must be very immune, to all other disturbances in political parties, layer. And we are saying this in affirmative, that the level we are in this country, it is not who votes that matters, it is who counts that vote that matters. That I say in affirmative. Because if young people, if women are waking up very early in the morning to line up to cast their vote, in the confidence, in the belief, to answer the question that you said, if I wake up and sacrifice my morning hours and line up and, be under the sizzling heat and scorched sun, does my voice count at the end of the day? And you see, ideally it should, but realistically it doesn't. So these are contradictions, the realities that we are seeing in the electoral processes. And I agree that, of course, had it not taken the Supreme Court of Kenya in 2017 to make and nullify that election, this election of 2022 was actually going to be more and more controversial than the one that we have in 2017. So, in other terms, what I'm saying is that there needs to be checks for IEBC, because the failure to have those checks, it is not just going to end in the hope that electoral processes are going to be free, fair, and credible. IEBC must be put to check, and we must have a strong institution that checks it, like the institution of judiciary, like the institution of parliament, like the institution, other institution. I don't like having executive hand in the running of judiciary, but at its looks for our judiciary, even as Joel saying that other institution, other jurisdiction, that does not have a presidential appointee. But ours is also political processes, because the political appointee, the processes that settle for IBC commissioner and the chair is a political one, that it has to go through in the nomination processes. It has to be somebody somewhere. There must be a parliamentary system in it, and then the names are sent to the appointing authority. So if he fails to appoint, people come back to the drawing board. I mean, these are things that we must really say in affirmative. But I promise to be brief as I wind up on this issue. IBC, chapter 15 of this constitution names IBC as one of the independent commissions that we should have. So that independence must not only be on paper, but it must be on both practice as well as in paper. And this is why I say, for me, I understand the processes that Joel and the team is putting in place, because I understand the wishes of Kenyan people, but the question is the reality of these processes that we are taking and undertaking right now. If the commissioner can still disagree on how the ballot papers are printed, even recently, the reported cases of some of the commissioners not agreeing even on the printing, the confused messages, and I said this in the beginning, what does that send to the public? You might be doing all those reforms and all this, but the communication, I repeat, the signals you're sending into the public, and actually, it is the signals that cost and cast aspersions on the integrity as it happens in the processes. So for me, that is what I stick to. So our voting is purely on tribe. Our voting is purely on the famous political party. Our voting, and recently the entry of opinion polls that is trying to swear aside the perception of Kenyans into what they're voting. No opinion polls actually is very objective on the issues that Kenyans need to interrogate on the voting system. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Joel, do you want to reply to some of the things that Daniel has said before I go to another speaker, perhaps?
Leah, I just actually wanted to say we have added, before Joel responds, we have added actually a few speakers, and I see one who I think may have something to say, who is Morris.
Okay.
So what I was thinking, if Joel, you could wait that we get some of the other comments in, and then you can respond. What do you think, Joel?
Fantastic. That's okay, Maria.
That
Morris,
is
go
okay.
ahead.
If I can get like a minute to prepare myself, I'm not ready to go.
Yeah.
So just
No
just
worries.
put somebody else, and then I'll chip in.
Yeah, there is Abihudi
Okay.
who's been waiting for a while.
Okay.
Abihudi.
Thank you so much, Dada, Maria. Thank you so much.
Karibu.
I think I was about to collapse, just waiting to have this opportunity to speak to you guys, because you're speaking about a thing that will probably is so much in so many people's heart. Because when you rig election, then it means you rig everything someone stands for. And I want to say something that people may not be so happy with, but I want to make this clear. I'm not a politician. I'm just a scientist. So whatever I say, you take it as a scientist, not necessarily as a politician. But I always pick things that you get wrong all the time. And I heard you guys. I heard the guy from Zambia. And I had people from Kenya. You talk about election rigging. But I'm happy that we have, in Tanzania, for example, we have Honorable Tundu, a person who is there to show you what being a politician or leader is all about. Now, please do not shut me down. And I know You guys may not understand it, but I tell you, I'm not a politician. I just look at things as they are. But you're talking about rigging, election rigging, ballot rigging, and whatever it is. You know, in America, we had a time where we were talking about George W. Bush. We were talking about Barack Obama. And we were talking about this other idiot who became a president, Mr. Trump. He was wrong and wrong and wrong. Making no mistake, he was wrong. And the people who were right, we stood firmly and we said, hey, Mr. Trump, you're wrong. And when the people voted, I didn't vote because I'm a Tanzanian. I'm not allowed to vote in America. You can put that in bank. I tell you the truth. I'm not allowed to vote in America, but I didn't vote. But I was so happy because I was involved in a campaign to make sure this idiot was not going to come back to be the president of the United States of America. And you know what he did? He was incumbent. He was a president, and he wanted not to lose. He did everything in his power not to lose. But what happened? He didn't win. Why? This is the lesson we should learn as Africans. Why Donald J. Trump didn't win? Why? He was the president of the United States of America. But he did not win. He had everything within his power. But he did not win. This is the lesson we should be talking about. This is the